We are recording live at Autodesk University, and welcome to the show, Brian. Excited to have you join us and take a few minutes to sit down and chat with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Can you take a couple minutes and kind of introduce yourself, kind of your background, and what brings you to AU this year?
Sure. So my name's Brian Nahas. I'm the Director of Virtual Design and Construction with Mortenson, based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Nice.
And I lead the VDC implementation for the organization, which at the company, we represent that as both the application of BIM and the long history of BIM implementation at Mortenson, which is now coupled with GIS and just this emerging evolution of technology and location awareness for our projects.
Very nice. And what brings you to AU this year?
I'm here to support the team. We have about 25 Mortenson team members here, and then I'm going to be speaking on a panel later today associated to the aspect of GIS as a complement to BIM technology.
So why the investment in GIS?
Yeah, it's a great question. So Mortenson, although we're known from the technology side as a lot of the advancements in BIM for commercial construction, we're known for our sports projects and some other large-scale healthcare projects nationally. Recently, a huge push has been on our energy and infrastructure projects. So when you think about large land use properties that stretch particular zones that could reach 100 acres, 500 acres, and beyond, all of a sudden location becomes super critical in regards to where you store material, how workers navigate the property, how you track and manage issues, where you can no longer use the nomenclature that a lot of the commercial team members may be used to, where you have a hierarchy of building, level, room number.
Right.
It's just not applicable in that setting. And that's where GIS and that emergence of location is like beyond critical. And all of a sudden it's been a huge push in the last few years.
Yeah. So what's that evolution been like? It's a big mindset shift.
It's a huge shift.
Get everybody on board. Just even the terminology. How have you guys managed
Absolutely. So the organization made a more intentional push with GIS about 3 years ago.
Okay.
But if we date back to, I think it's around 2015 in our WIN group, there was a lot of focus around taking aerial imagery, publicly available data sets, and they were doing overlays, but it was it was tough. Every time they had to kind of rebuild it from scratch.
Right.
So a few years ago, we started to see kind of a reemergence. A few team members found Esri's GIS platform and started moving it forward and started building workflows in it. And then this has been a fascinating effort where there wasn't much of a push into the organization for adoption. There was an extremely strong pull from our field users. And it's one of the fastest growing technology stacks within the company right now.
Interesting. But it started with field.
It started with the field and a couple of our VDC leads that found a new and better way to do it and use imagery and location information. Where you had a KMZ file and other type of land use data sets they were merging. We finally found more of an enterprise scale solution. And the minute that map became available on an iPad or in a tablet out in the field, spread like wildfire for the best. And it's been amazing to see.
That's awesome. I love that there was that strong push from the field. I feel like one of the issues in construction is that the field kind of gets ignored sometimes, or like the technology just gets crammed down on them. But having them really bought into the process, I mean, that's the key to any successful technology implementation. You really want their buy-in. Have them involved in it from the beginning.
Absolutely. And when we look at the maps our teams have made and the way they've stood up new workflows, it's for the most part very field facing. They're quite simple in their user interface. They're very task and workflow driven. So we haven't overcomplicated the system. And in reality, if you think about your typical day, people are becoming more and more familiar and comfortable with using map data. It may be in a different format, but when you think of various applications on your cell phone or smartphone, I mean, we're surrounded with map data all the time. And the ability to create a new way for our craft team members and our field leaders to interact with project data in a relatively consistent and similar manner has been super unique and way easier at times to push out for adoption compared to training on 3D models and model navigation and the semantics associated to that.
Yeah. How have you seen it with the kind of the interoperability and productivity savings when it comes to just a construction project in general? So the map, there's awesome details in there, but when it gets down to the kind of the brass tacks, where have you seen that?
So we've adopted GIS in 3 phases naturally. So in our design phase, that's just accelerated some automation of site evaluation.
Okay.
So I'll leave that to the side for now. When we go all the way out to the construction site, when you think of a major solar farm, I mean, 300 acres, where did we put pallet XYZ
right.
With these parts and materials? Knowing where that is very important. And the downtime in searching for things was kind of obvious. Of if you track it and you locate it on a map and it's traceable and searchable, then people will naturally be more efficient as far as documentation, but also in the day-to-day of their work. So we've noticed a lot of just streamlining people's physical awareness of the project, what is where, in addition to just the ease of accessibility and communication on site.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you have your class panel this afternoon. What's the main gist going to be about?
Absolutely. So the main target is really around the fact that although location, it seems obvious, has been ever present in construction forever, right? Survey control and layout has always been a core function. I think at times we almost separate ourselves when we create 3D model content in this white paper space. And the ability to now intersect 3D geometry data with publicly available or privatized map data and map intelligence, I think is going to create a whole new wave of use cases where historically they've run in their separate lanes.
Right.
And now they're starting to stitch together where you're able to leverage drone data in a direct overlay with your 3D model. And then you're able to update line work in Civil 3D through the GIS platform. So I think that interoperability, I think, is being solved.
Yeah.
And the data connectivity is going to be super, super interesting.
Yeah, it's really cool to see how far the technology has come, even in the last 3-5 years. There's been leaps and bounds. What do you see as the next step? What's the kind of the next evolution of the tech?
Yeah, so from my perspective, I think the next evolution really gets into all of the sensor and real-time data loggers that I think historically and even in the last 5 years, a lot of people want to use. And then you end up working your way into a series of various point solutions that solve one task or one aspect of tracking.
Right.
That's been a huge learning for myself in the breadth of GIS and the technology and what it can cover. I mean, it has been around for a very long time. It's just new to construction. It's new to the AEC. And the ability to leverage a lot of the process that has been stood up by law enforcement agencies, local municipalities, government organizations regarding data structure and data management, I think will be a great learning opportunity for our industry. And at the same time, be able to start to leverage weather data feeds, other IoT sensors, and pull that in to help drive the projects.
Yeah. How can the industry as a whole simplify that learning curve?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. So I don't have a GIS background. I took one geography course back in the day in college, and I wish I focused more on that. But what I learned and what I've been learning as we've had more team members embrace GIS and start to learn, it is teachable, but it is actually quite complex from a system infrastructure standpoint. So the ability to couple cross-training your VDC professionals and your project leaders with structured training is super important, but then acknowledge the fact that not every construction management leader has the skill set or the background to successfully scale and implement GIS. So being able to respect the market and recognize an opportunity for new talent, a new diverse background coming in, I think that'll be a huge benefit for the AEC.
Yeah. Are there certain industries that you're looking to that construction could kind of learn from and model themselves after?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I've started actually looking a little bit at law enforcement and like wildfire control and wildfire management.
Yeah.
And the reason is I see that as a contrast of construction is it's busy. There's a lot of real-time decisions being made.
Yeah.
And the ability to correlate how GIS can complement BIM information, which we're used to using.
Yeah.
But how the GIS side of it all is agile and how can it be agile. And when you look at more traditional GIS use at a municipality level, it's hard to connect the dots to either the speed of growth or the number of users or the change of information. So the ability to look to more real time, whether it's emergency response GIS implementations or crisis management, I think would allow us to start to look at how they use dashboards, how they manage the data flow, how they onboard large groups of teams into a project or a situation, and then deploy the technology for a period of time.
Yeah.
And then pull the data off at the end of the effort.
Yeah. I love that. I think it's super interesting. I wouldn't have made that connection, but I think you're spot on with that on it, which makes me think of what I think is going to be a big buzzword here at the conference is AI.
Absolutely.
How do you harness AI to really be able to leverage going through all that massive amount of data to make that real-time judgment easier?
So there's two pieces to that. So the first one, GIS really drives structured data. It is truly a database-driven solution. So it's really hard to get around, like on this project, we named it this way and set up our file in this format. So I think that's a benefit long-term of it's challenging our team members and our project leaders to be much more intentional with the way we structure the data and then use it. So I think that'll just help data quality in time. As far as what's feasible today, there are already multiple AI deep learning models that are available through Esri's system. So we effectively can unlock a lot of our drone aerial imagery and start to run image recognition and object identification to help support productivity tracking or maybe in the future schedule updates and other type of planning. We're starting to look at ways we can use aerial imagery and those models to start to do estimating takeoffs regarding like tree clearing and other type of land use type of civil infrastructure updates. And I think that'll be super powerful. So it's definitely already present. I think the ability to have consistent ways people use it will be what's to come.
Yeah. How far in the future do you think that comes?
I think the imagery is already with us. We just need to figure out the right way to collect the data so we can leverage the AI aspect of it. We're probably 2 to 3 years out from having a stable enough data set that we can consistently use it going forward.
Yeah.
One of the biggest learnings as of late has been this concept of like national data sets. So no longer are we looking at our GIS data like we may with BIM data where you have like, it's the project.
Right.
And everything is contained to that project. We still curate the GIS data on a project by project basis, but we're driving our teams and our projects to work together to establish more of that nomenclature layer state database standard. That way, everyone is working together on building the data hierarchy in the data set. So AI should be more feasible to implement.
Yeah, I love that because I think that there's so much power in crowdsourcing the data. You know, you're never going to really get to you're never going to be able to scale it if you keep focusing on these small project sets. Some project sets are massive.
Understand.
I know that. If you are able to crowdsource it over an entire company and over a huge region, you're able to get so much more efficiency gains and then take the pauses to kind of do the debriefing and then learn from a project that you may have never had any work on, but there's still insights that you can pull in and learn from that and pull that in. I think that is going to be a critical thing that is a different mindset and different way that construction has worked so far. It's kind of breaking down those silos.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're at the Design and Make conference here. What do you think the main theme is going to be coming out of?
So I'm looking forward to two things. Naturally, AI. We've already talked about that. I think that'll be a big push. I'm curious to see Autodesk's perspective on what they're working on, and how that could help all of the organizations that are here. I think the second theme is I think we've reached a point where VR and mixed reality is commonplace, and I hope we start to see more workflows that drive ease of use, because I think it is feasible. It's been around for years. Different teams and organizations approach it differently. So the ability to drive a little more common outcomes, I think, would benefit all. So I'm looking forward to hopefully hearing and seeing updates on Autodesk's perspective on that.
Yeah, nice. So on Bridging the Gap, we love focusing in on the innovation that's happening in construction right now. What does innovation mean to you?
Ooh, great question. So I think innovation to me is really giving the space for our team members to try something new. And I think we always balance this. How do you create enough space for them to feel empowered to not necessarily think totally out of the box, but what is that most next acceptable evolution of what I'm doing today to give back to a project, to drive efficiencies and add value to the team. So I really think it's the ability to give space and encourage and promote change for the betterment of our teams.
Yeah, I like what's the next acceptable evolution of it. I talk a lot about the 1% improvements, and that goes along spot on with that. Looking in kind of your crystal ball, what is modeling the future? What does that look like to you over the next 5 years for construction?
So I'd like to see in about 5 years from now, just the holistic nature of the way the data comes across on projects. I think there are still a series of buckets and silos and pockets of these people have this information and these people have this information, and it's still very it's almost forced communication to understand the whole picture. So I hope to see the way GIS has cracked open other industries regarding data sharing, data standards, a pretty ubiquitous level of information, how that will really complement and drive faster onboarding and decision-making of our projects, where everyone is more contextually aware. So then they can go back to kind of focusing on what they're great at.
Yeah, very nice. How do people find out more information and connect with you?
So they can happily reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect and share more. And then, of course, this week at the conference, I'm sure I'll see a lot of people, and happy to share more about our story.
Awesome. Well, final question for you. If I could give you all construction power, you could snap your fingers, you could innovate one thing in the industry, what would you pick to innovate?
I would say, well, that's a good one.
I leave the hard one for end.
I know. All right, this is tactical.
Okay.
But I think there's so much evolution with technology naturally, which is great, and that's why we're all here. The ability for people to pick it up faster. I think we're re-entering this new phase of training and coaching and enablement, where almost the technology curve is outpacing team members' availability to learn. So I think for me, it's really how do we create the ecosystem where people can pick it up and use it, and the training isn't overbearing or overly disruptive to the core purpose of what they do.
Right.
So it's not super exciting from like tech innovation, but I do think there's so much already great things happening. It's just making the choice of what do we use and how do we get everyone on board to use it the right way, I think will be just a natural challenge we'll face every day.
Yeah, and I think it's a great point, because the tech is changing at way faster of rate than what we can keep up with it. There's new things coming out all the time, especially I'm sure over the next week we're going to see some new things coming out. And so maybe that's an opportunity for AI as well too, to come in and help kind of simplify that and take the threshold down. Great point. Brian, thanks so much for taking the time, and good luck with your class panel this afternoon.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome.